We are here today for our CEO Chick Chat series, and this is where we bring in an incredible CEO woman who shares her story with us. But it's not just the story of her business and professional life, it's her personal journey, because as we know, for women, that's all combined. It's not separate, it's not business and personal, it's together, they're both. So we think it's an important part of understanding how a woman achieves leadership, what are those common threads, and what makes her stand out as a unique person. And I think Rose certainly defines unique. She's an incredible CEO. She's an incredible leader. And I will be candid, she's a friend of mine. I adore her, so just so you know. So I'm going to make her dish dirt today. So, Rose, thank you for joining us. And would you start by saying your name and who you work for and your title?
Thank you, Cynthia. Excuse me. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Rose Wang. I know it's spelled W-A-N-G, but in Mandarin Chinese, it's pronounced like W-H-A-N-G or W-O-N-G. And I'm the president and CEO of Binary Group. We are a government contractor, management consulting firm in the government IT space.
And you're number 5 of the fastest growing top 50 companies in Washington, D.C., is that correct?
Last year, yes, that's correct.
You stand accused. So, Rose, let's go back a little bit. I want to go back to where you grew up, and I want to talk about your life before you came here and took over for Binary Group. And I want to go back even before college, before high school. I want to go back to childhood.
Oh, my. Okay.
So where were you born and where were you raised?
I was born in Shanghai, and I was raised in Beijing, China. Beijing is the capital of China.
For those who don't know.
And what was the other question?
So where were you born and where were you raised? So you were raised in Beijing, but born in Shanghai.
Yep.
How close is Shanghai to Beijing?
Shanghai is 3,000 miles, 2,500 miles south of Shanghai. Both cities are on the coast, east coast of China. Shanghai was and is still the commerce center, and a lot of the international, multinational corporations set up shops in Shanghai first when they go into Chinese market. And Beijing is the political and cultural capital of China. So I was born in 1969 in Shanghai. My family moved to Beijing when I was 5, 1974.
And how many children were in your family?
Just 2 of us, me and my sister. I'm the older one.
All right. What did your parents do? What were their jobs in China? What did they do?
My parents are academicians. In fact, my parents just retired. My mom just fully retired last October. My dad just retired in the end of February. My mom is an environmental scientist. My dad is a civil engineer. And all their lives, they work for universities and research labs.
So what type of teaching did they do?
They did college and graduate level teaching, but mostly research work. My mom is actually very well known environmental scientist in China in terms of, she's a wastewater treatment expert in China. And internationally, she's recognized as well.
Excellent. So when you were growing up, were you in communist China or had it changed? When did reforms begin? Or were you growing up? What was the environment like for you when you grew up in your government at that time?
Was communist China.
I knew that. We're setting it up.
When I was born in 1969, China was in the midst of Cultural Revolution. And that was a political movement that Chairman Mao launched to cleanse the party, to cleanse the Communist Party. So what happened was in 1966, those of you in America grow up in the 60s probably remember reading about it and maybe even seeing film clips about it. All the young people in college and high schools kind of answered a call from Chairman Mao and started to turn everything upside down. Anything that's traditional Chinese culture that's been around for thousands of years were smashed. If you come from a family of property, if you have a family of intellectual knowledge, you are condemned. And unfortunately, my family came from a family of intellectual knowledge and background of some property. So my family were really just thrown into turmoil right away. When I was born, in fact, my father was somehow thrown into political prison because of who he was, not because he did anything. And so we grew up with nothing. We had nothing. Family house was raided and many times, and anything of value was thrown away. And one of my uncles was tortured and became disabled and all that.
Did you have the sense of fear and oppression, or did you have the sense that that's what everybody was doing?
That was everybody was doing, but we were especially in fear. When I was growing up, I was quite a chatty little girl. And,
really?
And I was always getting in trouble with my parents, especially my mom, because she said, your mouth is going to get you in trouble one day. And I remember this one time, I was probably 6 or 7, and my family, there was a big gathering in my home, because my grandparents lived with us, and a lot of uncles and aunts and cousins came to visit, and there was a big feast. So I proceeded to walk. I was at the kids' table in the room, and I saw the adults were having a great time. So I proceeded to walking into the room and said, Chairman Mao said, revolution is not about drinking and eating.
So that was good for the party?
Yes.
Literally the party and the party.
Yes, both parties. So, but the fear was, whenever as I was growing a little older, I became more aware of the surroundings. We could not talk about politics. We could not comment on anything. Even with our people who we love and trust, my parents have to rush to close the windows and make sure the curtains are drawn. That was just not the environment that was conducive for open communication of any kind. So that was the kind of fear I grew up in, environment.
So in school, what was it like then in school? And where they were teaching, were they able to continue to teach, or were they banned from teaching at that point?
There were about 10 years nobody in China really worked. From 1966 to 1976, there was no productivity other than the basic, I guess, manufacturing of basic goods and services. Universities were not teaching anybody for 10 years, and only K through 12 education was going on. So China was in disarray. And then Chairman Mao died in 1976, and there was a period, 2 or 3 years, of Gang of Four. Maybe you've heard that. More political turmoil, and then in 1978, when Deng Xiaoping took over, after several power struggles, the country started to open up. And that's where my life has changed. My family's life completely changed after 78.
So you kind of had this unique upbringing where you're really in an oppressive culture and society. You're young and you're brought up with it, so probably your interpretation of what's going on may be a little different from your parents who maybe had more freedom and then were oppressed, and your father's thrown in jail simply for being an educator. I mean, that's quite a bit of turmoil for one family to go. Your education, what was that like? Were you in a public school? Tell us about where you went to school.
K through 12, yeah, public school. Unlike here, private schools were for remedial purposes. So the public schools, there was always district-wide or city-wide or country-wide tests, standard tests. And so I was very fortunate. I had an outstanding education I received from China. I went to a boarding school, a 6-year boarding school that was one of the best in China for the 6th grade till 12th grade before I started college.
And how close was the boarding school to your home, and was that common for families to send their
No,
children?
it was not common. It was very selective. My home was about an hour by bus, so Monday morning I'd get up at 5 and take the bus and go to, or Sunday night, go to school, and not coming home until Saturday afternoon usually. And yeah,
and your sister went with you? She was there too?
Well, she's 2 years behind me. Yeah, she went to the same school. Yeah.
So, well, I know an interesting story about you that I think is just a fascinating story. At one point, your parents were sent out of the country to Europe. Tell us a little bit about what happened and why they were sent out of the country, and about you and your sister.
Well, so 1978, when Deng Xiaoping took over from the previous regime, one of the policies he made was very critical, I think, to China's growth today, was to send their best of the best of the best, the top academicians to Western countries. There were about 12 Western countries that China made agreements with to give them postgraduate studies or get them familiarized with the cutting-edge technology so they can learn that from these countries and come back and serve the country. So my parents were picked. They were in their early 40s, and my dad was UK. My mom was selected for West Germany. So they finally waited their turn, and my mom left first in 1981, and then my dad shortly afterwards. So there was one summer with just me and my sister in charge. I was in charge. I was 12, maybe 13 at most. And I learned how to party that summer.
So let's understand. So your parents are out of the country, and you're in charge of your sister.
For 3 months.
For 3 months. And so your parents left you a sum of money.
Yeah.
To manage the household, and you're
Yes,
about 12 or 13 for a 3-month period.
12.
And,
I was 12.
And what did you do with the money?
I spent it all in 1 week.
So, okay, so you had a remaining, 2.5, if not more, months to manage the rest of the household. How did that go over with your parents?
Not well at all.
But how did your sister feel about you?
I think she thought I was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because we quit taking buses around. That's one thing. I thought taxis, were just the coolest thing. So we went by taxi everywhere. Of course, that ate up money real quick. And we went shopping. We bought lipstick that we were not allowed to buy, for little girls and stuff. We got all kinds of stuff.
So it was a great week.
It was.
It was a great week.
Yeah. Until I realized we really ran out of money. So I had to call my aunt to come over and cook us dinner. And she's like, why do I need to come over and cook dinner for you?
There's a small problem.
There was just a small problem. We didn't have a lot of food because we didn't have any money left.
So I think that's fascinating. Can you imagine today leaving your 12 or 13-year-old in charge of your younger sibling for 3 months? But imagine being in a culture where your country says you're going to leave, and you leave, and you have to make those provisions. I mean, just imagine. And but I think what happened was probably what happens in every household, that you leave the 13-year-old in charge with all the money. So a lesson learned here for everybody.